Would you move that?
No.
Yeah.
Somebody's not happy.
I took care of it.
My wife went over to the grocery, so when she pulls in, you'll probably hear 3 dogs have a fit. So I might have to mute myself here sometime during this. We got about a
Can you
minute.
start muting yourself now?
I could, yes. I should mute myself because there's something I'd like to say to you. Okay, welcome to your Newark City Council. It's March 1st, 2021, 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting, Zoom meeting, actually to order. Janine, please call the roll.
Mr. Fennell,
Here.
Ms. Hall,
Here.
Mr. Harris,
Here.
Mr. Labutus,
Here.
Mr. Lang,
Present.
Mr. Marmee,
Present.
Mr. Rath,
Here.
Mr. Barker,
Here.
Mr. Blake,
Here.
Mr. Bub.
Here.
All right, we have everyone either here or present this evening. Next, we'll go with the invocation by Mr. Blake. Mr. Blake.
May you bow your heads. To you, who is able to do more than we ask or imagine, we come asking you to do the unimaginable to protect us both in physical health and our mental health. May we be wise in how we use this opportunity to make a difference in the lives of the people of Newark and responsible to the scarce and precious resources entrusted to us. May you guide us to seek a shared vision to help the people and address the needs of all the people of Newark. It is in strength that we ask, for your name that we pray. May Jesus be with all of us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Blake. Next, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Barker. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Does anybody have anything?
Mr. President,
Mr. Bub.
yes, I will abstain from ordinance 2103 this evening.
You said 2103?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We'll move on to the minutes of our February 16th, 2021 meeting. You all have a copy of those. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Labutus. Second by Mr. Barker. Okay. All those approved, give me a thumbs up. Anyone opposed, give me a thumbs down. That passes. Next, we have under appointments, we have Mayor Hall reappointing Mary Billy to the Combined General Health District Board, term beginning April 1, 2021 and expiring February 28, 2026. Mayor Hall, would you like to say anything about that? Unmute yourself first, please.
Yep, I'm working on it. The space bar wasn't working. Yeah, Mary's done a nice job representing us and certainly has a desire to be on the board for an additional term. And the board wants to welcome her aboard to as a renewal. So I would reach out and ask that council reappoint her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All those in favor, give me a thumbs up. Opposed, give me a thumbs down. That passes 8-2. Next, we have reports of standing committees, one from finance, one from service, and one from personnel. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Under reports from city officials this evening, we have one from the City of Newark Department of Public Safety, basically from our fire chief. I believe he will be coming to Safety Committee to summarize that here in the near future, but it's the Fire and EMS 2020 Annual Report. Also, we have a report from Judge Stansberry. I talked to him a little earlier, though. This report, he is revising this report, so just disregard this evening, and he will be giving us an updated report or another report at the next meeting on March 15th. So just disregard this report this evening. Under communications, we have one from Jeff Greenrod opposing the 21st Street rezoning. Again, that will be the recommendation of the Planning Commission will be March 12th. They will give us a recommendation, and then it will come back to council for a vote on April 1st. We have one from Joanne Woodland. A thank you letter for the safety and efficiency changes made at the intersection of Sharon Valley Road and King Road. I believe that was the cutting of the pine trees up and up so you could see around that corner. Next, Ohio Division of Liquor Control will transfer application from Mid-Ohio Spirits to LDY Inc. DBA Thirsty Jake's drive-through. One from Howie Hill, owner of HD&R Truck Repair, 55 Flory Street, issues regarding theft, vandalism, drug paraphernalia, and trespassing at the businesses in Flory Street and the Union Street area. One other from Linda Abbott, an update on the petition she has sent us against the 21st Street zoning change. And the last from Granville resident Jess Paget, opposing the River Road zoning. Again, that also will be discussed by Planning Commission on March the 12th, coming to council for a vote on April 1st. And that concludes our comments. Next, we have comments from citizens. We have two sections for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate or a question and answer period with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard. If we had anyone that would like to speak this first section, if you'd turn on your video and I'll recognize you one at a time. There is one other section for citizens' comments after the legislation. Do we have anyone for this first section? You see anybody, Spence?
Yeah, their name is concerned business owner, but it's Howie Hill.
Okay. Okay. Would you like
I'm
to speak,
asking them
sir?
to unmute right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes. If you,
I appreciate you taking the time to hear me this evening.
yeah, hang on just a second. If you give us your name and address for the record, and then go ahead.
My name is Howie Hill, the owner of HD&R and H.A. Hill Trucking, 55 Forey Street, North Ohio. We've been having a lot of issues with homeless, theft, vandalism, breaking the glass, cutting of the fence, vandalizing my own trucks and my own bullpen. I've been in business in this area since '06, and this is the worst I've seen it. I don't report all of it. With the COVID and our police force stretched pretty thin, I kind of take care of it ourselves, but it's got to the point now where somebody needs to know about it. So councilmen have been here. I appreciate the prompt. I've sent letters out, and they took care of it immediately as far as here. And I have seen more police presence. So as a concerned business area in this area, we've got an issue here at this end of town. And I didn't know, like I said, I just wanted to let everybody know that that we've got an issue.
Well, thank you, sir. We have the safety director on the Zoom call or Zoom meeting here tonight, so I'm sure he will be having a conversation with the police chief, and we'll see what can happen from there.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, I appreciate the prompt from council, and I have seen more police presence, so I appreciate that too.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have anyone else? This first section of citizens' comments. Okay. We'll move on to ordinances on the second reading. There are none this evening. Ordinances on the first reading, 21-02. Janine?
Ordinance number 21-02 by Mr. Bub, an ordinance amending the position classification, pay range, and department authorization tables of the City of Newark Department of Service Division of Cemetery and Parks by creating the classification of operations manager and setting the compensation therefore.
21-02 will be held for 2 weeks till March 15th for our next meeting. Next on the first reading, we have 21-03.
Ordinance number 21-03 by Mr. Marmy to provide for the issuance of $550,000 of bond anticipation notes in the anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying a portion of the city's cost for Horns Hill Road sanitary sewer project improvements and declaring an emergency.
21-03 is on its first reading, but is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy,
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-03.
motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy. Is there a
Second.
Second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 21-03? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
and Mr. Bub.
Abstain.
21-03 passes 9-4, none against, and one abstention. Next, we move on to 21-04.
Ordinance number 21-04 by Mr. Marmy to provide for the issuance of not to exceed $1,125,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of Church Street area improvements and repair, including electrical, sidewalk, street, and streetscape, and all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
21-04 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President, I make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-04.
Mr. Marmy makes a motion,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 21-04? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub.
Yes.
21-04 passes 10-0. You have to unmute yourself there when you want to speak, Spence. I don't know if you realize that or not.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Next, now I lost my earpiece. Next, we have being a smart aleck. Next, we have 21-05. Janine,
Ordinance number 21-05, Mr. Marmy, to provide for the issuance of $500,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of construction of the stream bank protection project, including replacement of the sheet pile dam on Raccoon Creek, site preparation, and all necessary appurtenances, and declaring an emergency.
again, 21-05 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President, I make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-05.
Mr. Marmy makes a motion to adopt,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 21-05? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub.
Yes.
And 21, let's see, 21 that was 05, wasn't it?
Yep.
Passes 10-0. Next, we have 21-06.
Ordinance number 21-06 by Mr. Marmy, an ordinance consolidating 3 bond anticipation note issues of the city of Newark, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Once again, 21-06 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish, Mr. Marmy?
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-06.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Do we have any discussion on 21-06? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
yes,
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
and Mr. Bub.
Yes.
21-06 passes 10-0. And finally, we move on to 21-07. Janine?
Ordinance number 21-07 by Mr. Rath, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 166 Hudson Avenue, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of MFR Multifamily Residence District to MB Medium Intensity Business District zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
And 21-07 will be referred to the Planning Commission and then back to us after their discussion. Now we go to resolutions on the second reading, 21-05.
Resolution number 21-05 by Mr. Marmy, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 21-05. What is your wish?
Mr. President, I make a motion to adopt resolution 21-05.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any discussion on 21-05? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
yes,
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub.
Yes.
21-05 passes 10-0. Next on the second reading, we have 21-08.
Resolution number 21-08 by Mr. Rath, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service for the City of Newark, Ohio, to enter into a purchase agreement with Park National Bank for the lease purchase of 4 vehicles.
Heard the second reading of 21-08. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 21-08.
Motion by Mr. Rath,
Second.
second by Mr. Labutus. Is there any discussion on 21-08? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
yes,
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub.
Yes.
21-08 passes 10-0. Next on the second reading, we have 21-10.
Resolution number 21-10 by Mr. Rath, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service for the City of Newark, Ohio, to execute a cooperative construction agreement with the Village of Granville, Ohio, for a new bridge on Thornwood Crossing, which will replace the existing bridge on Cherry Valley Road.
You've heard the second reading of 21-10. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 21-10.
second,
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 21-10? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
yes,
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
yes,
Mr. Bub.
Yes.
21-10 passes 10-0. And finally tonight, resolutions on the first reading, 21-11.
Resolution number 21-11, expedite by Mr. Marmy, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
21,
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
I make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 21-11.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bub. Mr. Marmy?
Thank you, Mr. President. These are some items that need to be expedited. They're items that need to be corrected as far as some corrections made to the budget that was passed. So they need to be expedited so then the appropriate money gets into the correct funds.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Janine, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
yes,
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
yes,
and Mr. Bub.
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt resolution 21-11.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Bub. Is there any more discussion on 21-11?
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to some of the corrections that were made, there's also a couple of other items that are very worthwhile in mentioning. One thing is we have some additional funds going into the budget stabilization. Also, we have some funds going into capital improvements to help with the streets. And also there's some sidewalks that are going to be constructed in order to create safer walking paths for folks. It's much needed, and I think it's a great thing that the city is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Anyone else? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
yes,
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
yes,
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
yes,
Mr. Bub.
Yes.
21-11 passes 10-0. That concludes our legislation for this evening. Thank you so much for paying attention. Next, we have our second opportunity of comments from citizens. Again, the same rule applies. This is not a debate with council. This is your opportunity to be heard. If we have anyone, if you'll turn your video on so I can recognize you, and we'll go one at a time. Is there anyone for this second section of comments from citizens?
Good evening.
Hang on. I got you.
Okay.
Okay. All
Hi,
right.
good evening.
That's blind. Go right ahead. If you give us your name and address for the record, and your turn.
Yes, sir. Beth Blind, 33 Summit Street, Newark. And I'm calling in support of Mr. Hill. We have, as nonprofits and through individual relationship, been working more and more one-on-one with people who are showing troubles, whether it be through addiction or exhibiting dependencies. And I want to tell you, Mr. Hill, changes are coming. And we've had several wonderful things, like I said, through persistent encounters, working with those who are addicted and those who are unsheltered. And this is something that can't be done through committees necessarily. It has to be done through time and involvement. And so Mr. Hill and I had a long conversation, and we totally have his back. And like I said, we've been pressing into that area more and more in the South End, just engaging people, because we know through transitioning folks who are unsheltered or working through those with addiction, it takes about 2 to 4 years through that, working through not only environments, people, places, and things, but mindsets. And so, we've opened another base where we can engage people in the South End, and through champions and citizens in action, and also our independent living house has been sheltering people and engaging them in independent living and life skills. And so within a year's time, living at a low cost, they can earn and save money to move on within a year's time to independent living. And it's not an easy thing, because nobody becomes homeless or addicted overnight. And again, like I said, it takes a minute to get out of it. But using hard boundaries, and then helping people get out of those old relationships and places and environments, real changes are happening. And I just want to thank Mr. Hill or Howie for giving his story, because it's important. And I know I've shared mine. Yeah, things have gotten tough in the South End, but you know what? There's hope, and good things are starting to happen because we are creating relationships. So I want to thank you all for hearing him. I want to thank the NPD for going and supporting him. I was speaking with an officer last night in the South End, just thanking him and encouraging him for just being ever surveillant. And so I appreciate you guys, and thank you. Thank you. Good things are coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blind. Is there anyone else? Okay, do we have any city officials this evening? Seeing none, Assistant Law Director Moore.
I would pass this evening. Thank you.
You had to come back on all that. You're not even going to say anything.
It's been a good experience tonight. I always enjoy being here. So
Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Mayor Hall.
Yes, as it is quite nice to see warmer temperatures and the white snow going away. Again, we've all thanked our road crews, but we never can thank them enough. They do a great job, and that was a little bit challenging there for a couple of weeks. Also, I want to thank everybody in the community that's done what I really think is a great job during this COVID to be protect and socially distance. The numbers are starting to turn in our favor, and we're real fortunate with that. It's not near victory or anything of that sorts yet, but I think the vaccines are making a difference. Surely through the hospital, through the little clinics and stuff that is going on at Kroger and Giant Eagle, and then of course from the health department, they're really doing a phenomenal job getting those vaccines out into the community. So it's kind of encouraging. It's been a long haul. I encourage everyone to still socially distance, follow the guidelines. The governor announced some easing today, and of course dropping the age down to 60 for vaccines starting on Thursday, so you can get online and register for those, and I encourage people to do that. And with that, I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank David Rhodes and the good folks at Property Maintenance for helping me figure out some challenging problems and just being so responsive for that. So I really do appreciate it. I did want to just really quickly comment on my no vote on the appointment. That has directly to do with the fact that we do not have a harm reduction needle exchange program here in the city or in the county rather. And so that's where that stems from. I believe that it is an effective approach that we should have to save the people that we can. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Fennell. Ms. Hall.
Thank you. I will pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Mr. Hill for coming on and speaking. He sent out an email, I think it was a week ago Friday, and I met with him last Monday morning and discussed the situation. And then Jeremy and Spencer and I met with them on Friday. And I also want to thank Safety Director Hickman and Chief Baum and the police department for getting right on there and responding to his problem. Mr. Hill is really understanding, and he's willing to do whatever he needs to do to help the situation. And it's just nice to have our law enforcement there to support those that need it. I also want to thank Buster Prince. I got some calls on some major potholes, and he got the crews out there and got the potholes taken care of, and I appreciate that. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Labutus.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will pass this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Labutus. Mr. Lang.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to echo the thanks and gratitude for the street department. I spoke with with Buster today, and really appreciate the job that's you guys have been doing. I've received a number of different compliments from different individuals that the streets are really well plowed during a pretty difficult time. So glad they're getting a little bit of break here to get ready before we get some more. So, and then I'd also like to thank the administration for figuring out how to get some money for sidewalks. Really excited about the passing of Resolution 21-11 tonight, and being able to come up with a budget that hopefully we'll be able to put together a nice program to at least get moving on some of these sidewalks that we need to update or fix. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a Finance Committee meeting. I also would like to thank Director Hickman. I had some concerns about the vacancy with the animal control position. He was right on it and made sure that there's temporary procedures put into place to make sure that our animal control was taken care of within the city of Newark. He and the police chief did that and then communicated that out to us. In addition, they're working on a long-term solution for the animal control. And I just wanted to thank him publicly. I appreciate it. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Mr. Rath. Spence, you think he's still with us?
He's there. He is.
Here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Rath.
Woohoo. I'll call a service committee meeting for 2 weeks. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. And Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just would like to, once again, I know Jeff Harris mentioned this earlier, Howie, thank you for coming on tonight. We got your letter, we got your emails. I have also talked to a couple other business owners in that stretch of roadway, and I'm hearing kind of the same comments. So just planning to echo some of those to Director Hickman tomorrow. And also would like to thank Joe Paul. He was on, my understanding he's on vacation last week. I did not know that. He called me back on a couple issues I was having and got those resolved. So I appreciate that very much. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess first I want to thank our paramedics. Last week, sort of an immediate situation happened with my mother where I had to call and get the assistance of our fine men and women in our fire services. And they came and assisted in transporting my mom to the hospital, and they're very professional. And it was just a very great experience to know that we have such great people working for us. And even when we need them, they're there and doing the job that needs to get done. So I want to publicly thank the paramedics that assisted my family last week. Thank you very much for that help. I know you're doing your job, but it was just very nice to see you there and to assist. I do want to secondly thank Mr. Hill. I do appreciate you bringing to our attention the concerns that you had. As Councilman Harris mentioned, myself and him and Councilman Barker met with Mr. Hill at his business last Friday afternoon, and it was good to hear from him, because sometimes when people don't speak up, we don't know all of the issues. And so I appreciate him speaking up and appreciate him sharing his experiences that he's having there, and also sharing the experiences of what the Eagles and the VFW are also having. And I will echo that it's not just the businesses, it's the residents that live on Worley Avenue, on Sirocco, and that whole neighborhood there is experiencing issues. And specifically what I want to call out is what I got from Mr. Hill's meeting. My meeting with Mr. Hill was, there's repeat offenders here. And so we typically, our safety forces are dealing with repeat folks that are getting calls and calls again by the same people. And so I think when we know certain individuals, there's a better way to handle these situations. So I'm looking forward to having some conversations about, what can we do with these repeat offenders, so to say. And then it's also the personal property damage. I mean, that's just anyone that's dealing with damaging, either it be a resident or a business. When you're dealing with personal property damage, that's just unacceptable. I appreciate the fine work of all of our social service agencies and our various nonprofits, but ultimately we have to come together for a solution for our residents and our businesses. And I just look forward to having some more conversations on how we can better address that and be a little more proactive with these types of situations. But Mr. Hill, thank you for being here tonight and expressing your comments. And we look forward to having more future comments in the time to come. And I just really appreciate Councilman Harris and Barker for also meeting with him. And I think we were able to share some experiences there that we hadn't had done before. So thank you very much. With that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Blake, and I hope your mom's okay. Mr. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, best wishes to your mom, Jeremy. Hope for a quick recovery. Also, with the animal control officer position, I too, along with Mr. Marmee, I hope that position works out for the best for the city. And I want to thank Toby for his work. And that's a tough job, but not only was he doing the animal control position, but there's kind of a few hats you have to fill. One is the humane agent, which he was also filling in or doing as well with the city, along with handling the cat situation. So he was not only animal control, but there was, kind of three positions there. So, and it's very important that, we service the city, with that position in whatever capacity the police chief chooses. But we definitely don't want to let this go undone for too long. So with that, I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. Thanks, everyone, for your attention this evening. Our next meeting is March 15th. That's 2 weeks from tonight. The committee meetings will start at 5:45. Full council starts promptly at 7 p.m. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Labutus, second by Mr. Rath. All those in favor, or Mr. Harris? I'm sorry. All those in favor, give me a thumbs up. Thank you. We're adjourned, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. We will be Zooming probably 2 more meetings. And if everything continues this way, then we'll be back to council chambers. But depending on the governor's orders, et cetera, I'll